Okay, I have a confession to make right at the top here. I almost, and I mean literally, my mouse was hovering over the confirmation button. I almost fell for the absolute sneakiest online checkout trick today.
Oh no. What were you buying?
Well, I wasn't buying, I was just browsing, harmlessly looking online, and I found myself staring at this totally ridiculous, completely unnecessary, very high-end espresso machine.
Let me guess. One of those massive, shiny cafe-style ones.
Exactly. Way out of my budget. I knew it, my rational brain knew it, but then right at the bottom of the screen, this really friendly, brightly colored little text popped up.
Right.
And it told me I didn't actually have to pay for it today. I could just pay a tiny, almost laughable fraction of it right now. And for a split second, my brain was like, oh, well, that's practically free.
It really gets you.
And it does. So, welcome back to Bricknomics. I'm Sarah, and today we are exposing the sneaky little math tricks that make our bank accounts disappear.
And I'm Leo, and I am so excited to get into this. And I will readily admit right now, I am currently stacking way too many of those tiny payments myself.
Oh, you are?
Oh, absolutely. You think you're just making one smart, low-impact financial choice, but suddenly you have a dozen of these micro-obligations floating around in the background. It is an incredibly seductive system.
Because it doesn't feel like traditional debt, right?
Exactly. It doesn't trigger the debt alarm in your head.
It just feels like a minor convenience in the heat of the moment. So, for you listening right now, our mission today is to thoroughly unpack exactly how this modern machinery works.
We are digging into the buy now, pay later ecosystem, or what we are categorizing today as the fragment trap.
The fragment trap, I love that term, because we want to look at the underlying behavioral economics and dissect the UX and UI tricks these platforms use to bypass our logical filters.
Right.
And most importantly, we're going to explore some very concrete, actionable strategies to fight back and regain control of your cash flow.
Because what we are really dealing with here are perfectly engineered, heavily researched interfaces. They are designed specifically to exploit the natural blind spots in human cognition.
They know exactly what they're doing.
Oh, totally. The phrase sneaky math tricks is so apt because the math itself isn't hidden. It's right there. But the presentation of that math is manipulated to circumvent how we traditionally evaluate risk and value.
It's all about framing.
Once you see the psychological levers they're pulling, the entire checkout experience looks completely different.
So let's start with the classic scenario, the ground zero for this trap. Imagine you are browsing online, just scrolling on your phone, and you find a pair of shoes.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
And they are $100. Now, when I see a solid 3-digit price tag like that, my immediate reaction is usually to mentally cross-reference it with my other expenses.
Right, you do that mental math.
I start thinking, well, that's half my weekly grocery budget, or, that's the utility bill. It triggers this very natural sense of hesitation.
And behavioral economists actually have a term for that exact hesitation. It's called the pain of paying.
The pain of pay.
Yeah, and it's a literal neurological response. Studies using fMRI scans have shown that handing over a tangible amount of money actually activates the anterior insula.
Wait, the part of the brain that registers physical pain?
Exactly. It's the region associated with physical pain and disgust. And that pain serves a crucial evolutionary purpose. It acts as a natural brake pedal.
So we don't just spend everything we have.
Right. It forces a moment of reflection so we don't deplete our finite resources all at once.
Which makes total sense. I mean, we need that friction to survive. But then, and this is where the buy now, pay later pivot happens right below that intimidating $100 price tag, the site offers a completely different reality.
The alternative option.
Yeah. It uses a contrasting color, maybe a slightly bolder font, and it says, or just 4 payments of $25.
And suddenly it's like you are looking at a completely different product.
The whole mental calculus just shifts immediately.
That massive cognitive shift that happens there is really a masterclass in the anchoring effect and mental accounting.
Break that down a bit for us.
So when your brain sees $25, it completely recategorizes the severity of the purchase.
Because 25 feels harmless.
Completely harmless. You no longer compare it to the utility bill. $25 belongs in the casual lunch bucket or the weekend coffee mental bucket. The platform successfully changes your anchor from the total cost to the fragmented cost.
And in doing that, they are heavily leaning on present bias.
Oh, huge time.
Because our brains are notoriously terrible at valuing our future selves.
We really are.
When we agree to give up our future money, it just doesn't feel like a sacrifice today. Our present self gets the immediate dopamine hit of acquiring the brand new shoes.
And your future self is left to deal with the consequences.
Exactly. We look at the total price, and the UI basically says, hey, don't look at that. Look over here at this cute, manageable little number.
You're touching on a really crucial point about how the interface dictates our behavior. The buy now, pay later model thrives on the fact that your present self is fundamentally short-sighted.
It separates the acquisition from the consequence.
It does. We completely lose the thread of reality, which is that we are still committing $100 of our future liquidity. The UI is just designed to make the future abstract and the present incredibly tangible.
I think the danger, though, isn't necessarily in a single isolated purchase. Like, one $25 payment isn't going to completely derail a solid financial plan.
No, of course not. If you use it once, pay it off and move on. It's just a cash flow tool.
Right. The real issue is the normalization of the behavior, which brings us to the second part of this, the stacking problem.
Yes, the normalization is where the architectural trap really snaps shut, once that psychological barrier is broken.
Once you realize how easy it is.
Exactly. Once you experience how frictionless it is to acquire something without immediately paying for it, the behavior scales rapidly.
It cascades.
You do this with the shoes on a Tuesday. A week later, you see a jacket on sale, and the interface tells you it's only $20 today.
Just 20 bucks.
Then maybe some concert tickets for $30 a month. You aren't just making purchases anymore. You are building a portfolio of phantom expenses.
Phantom expenses. That is such a good way to put it, because human working memory just isn't equipped to handle that kind of asynchronous tracking.
We simply can't do it.
We can't actively hold a dozen different microtransactions, all with different billing cycles, in our heads at once. It creates this profound financial cognitive dissonance.
You check your bank account on payday, expecting to see a certain amount of liquidity.
It's not there.
Because a significant portion of it is already spoken for by decisions you made 3 weeks ago. It's an incremental bleed.
It effectively turns consumer goods into accidental subscriptions.
Accidental subscriptions, yes. And actually, speaking of accidental subscriptions...
Uh-oh. I feel a story coming.
I should probably share a rather humbling example of how easily our tracking mechanisms fail.
Let's hear it.
So I signed up for a free trial of this highly specialized premium meditation app, just to check it out, for research purposes. And I was absolutely certain I would remember to cancel it after the 7 days.
Of course you were.
I consider myself fairly organized, so I didn't even bother setting a calendar reminder.
Right. And how long did you actually end up paying for this premium digital enlightenment?
An entire full calendar year.
A year.
A full year. It was just quietly siphoning a small, barely noticeable amount out of my checking account every single month.
I have to gently tease you here, because for someone who studies this stuff, that is amazing.
I know. It completely flew under my radar because the amount was so seemingly insignificant. It wasn't until my annual budget review that I actually caught it.
I am teasing, but honestly, that is incredibly relatable. It perfectly illustrates the bandwidth failing we were just talking about.
Exactly. When a massive, unexpected bill arrives, our brain flags it as an emergency, and we address it immediately.
But when a tiny $20 charge leaves the account, our brain just categorizes it as background noise.
Stacking weaponizes that default bias against us. But instead of a digital app, it's for physical goods.
The psychology is identical, though. The subscription model and the buy now, pay later model both rely on our tendency to take the path of least resistance.
Canceling a subscription requires effort. Tracking multiple staggered payment plans requires cognitive load.
And our brains prefer to do nothing. So these companies structure their revenue models around our natural inertia.
That brings up a broader question about the evolution of consumer spending. Before everything was digitized, we didn't really have this problem of invisible asynchronous drain, at least not at this micro level.
Right, which brings us to the concept of digital friction, because the landscape has shifted dramatically over the last few decades.
If we trace the lineage of purchasing friction, it's actually a fascinating downward slope. Historically, paying for things involved a significant amount of physical, tactile friction.
Like actual cash.
Even 30 years ago, buying those $100 shoes required physical effort. You had to travel to the bank or an ATM. You had to withdraw the cash, count the bills, hold them in your hand, and physically surrender them to another person.
And as we discussed earlier with the anterior insula, that act of surrendering physical cash actually hurts.
You can see the stack of bills getting smaller.
You literally feel the physical loss of the resource. Then we moved to checks, which introduced a slight abstraction.
But you still had to write it out and balance a ledger.
Right. Then came credit cards, which abstracted the pain further. But you still had a single consolidated monthly bill that forced a moment of reckoning.
And that is the critical distinction between traditional credit cards and the modern buy now, pay later ecosystem.
How so?
Credit cards delayed the pain, but they still aggregated it. When that monthly statement arrives, you experience the pain of paying all at once.
Okay, I see.
The BNPL model scatters the pain so thinly across multiple months and multiple individual items that the pain is effectively neutralized.
Because it's just tiny drops instead of a wave.
Exactly. The digital checkout process today, where Face ID scans your face for half a second, the screen glows green, and the transaction is complete, is engineered to systematically eradicate every single ounce of friction.
It makes the spending totally invisible. You get all the dopamine of acquisition with absolutely zero immediate consequence.
But that consequence does eventually catch up.
Usually around the third or fourth installment, and by the time that delayed payment hits your account a month or two later, the psychological landscape has completely changed.
It creates a severe hangover effect.
The hangover effect.
Yeah, because by the time you are making that final payment, the item is no longer new. The shoes are scuffed, the jacket has been worn, the initial thrill has completely evaporated.
That's so true.
You are now paying for an item that feels old, which generates a surprising amount of resentment.
You're essentially paying a debt on past dopamine.
That's exactly what it is.
And when you fracture the timeline like that, separating the joy of the purchase from the friction of the payment, it fundamentally alters how we assign value to the things we own. We no longer associate the item with the labor or the sacrifice it took to acquire it.
Which leads directly to uninhibited, impulsive consumption.
Because the brake pedal is gone.
We stop evaluating whether an item is actually worth our time and labor, and we start evaluating whether we can simply absorb the next micropayment.
It shifts the consumer mindset from, can I afford this asset, to can I survive this cash flow hit?
Which is a very dangerous metric for financial health.
It really is. So how do we practically push back against this? Are we just doomed to be endlessly tricked by our own brains and these beautifully designed checkout buttons?
No, we certainly aren't doomed. Recognizing the psychological mechanism is the first half of the battle. The second half is implementing structural rules to defend your future self.
Right. We need hard boundaries. I've been thinking about this a lot, and there's a really practical approach to this that we like to use on the show. 2 distinct, uncompromising rules to counteract this entire ecosystem.
Let's get into those, because the best part is they don't require you to be an accountant.
No spreadsheets required. The first piece of advice is just a one-at-a-time rule.
It is a brilliantly straightforward boundary. The rule dictates that you should never, under any circumstances, have more than one active payment plan at any single time.
I love how simple that is.
The power of it lies in its ability to artificially reintroduce the friction that the technology specifically engineered away. If you are currently paying off those $100 shoes and you suddenly see a jacket you want, this rule forces a hard stop.
You cannot buy the jacket using a payment plan until the shoes are completely paid off. It forces you to actually wait, which is such a foreign concept in digital commerce today. You have to deal with the friction of completely clearing that first debt before you acquire a new one.
And it totally neutralizes the stacking problem.
Yes. You can never accidentally build that $125 phantom subscription if you physically do not allow yourself to have more than one active plan. It acts as a hard circuit breaker for your spending habits.
A circuit breaker that naturally forces prioritization. If you know you only have one slot available for a payment plan, you are going to be much more selective. You'll reserve it for something you genuinely value, rather than impulsively burning it on a trivial late-night purchase simply because the button is sitting right there.
Which leads us directly into the second and admittedly much more rigorous rule.
Oh, this is the one that really challenges you. The cash test.
The premise here is absolutely uncompromising. The cash test states that if you couldn't afford to buy the item twice in cash right now, today, you absolutely should not buy it on a payment plan.
Let's apply that back to the shoes. If you do not currently have $200 in truly disposable cash sitting in your checking account, you fail the test.
Think about how aggressively that shatters the $25 illusion. Your brain looks at the screen and tries to whisper, hey, come on, it's only $25 today. We can swing that.
But the cash test forces you to drag that full $100 out of the shadows, double it to $200, and hold it up against your actual current bank balance.
It grounds you back in reality instantly. But let me push back on this a bit, because I can hear people listening right now and thinking, okay, that's fine for sneakers or a blender, but what if my laptop dies and I literally need it for my freelance work tomorrow? Does the cash test still apply if it's an emergency?
That is the exact nuance we need to discuss. The cash test is primarily designed to combat the frictionless acquisition of depreciating consumer goods. Things we want, not things we need for survival or income generation. If your refrigerator dies or your work laptop crashes, those are capital emergencies. In those rare edge cases, a zero-interest payment plan might genuinely be the most rational tool to bridge a cash flow gap.
But we have to be ruthlessly honest with ourselves about what constitutes an emergency.
Exactly. A new gaming console is not an emergency. The cash test is a heuristic meant to redefine how we view affordability for discretionary spending.
It forces you to stop lying to yourself about what you can afford. The checkout screen wants you to define affordability as, can I scrape together the funds for the first installment today?
And then the cash test demands that you redefine affordability as, does my current actual wealth comfortably exceed the total value of this item?
It's such a massive paradigm shift.
It shifts your entire perspective from mere cash flow management, which is really just surviving pay cycle to actual wealth preservation. It's a vital cognitive reframing tool.
Because by demanding you have double the cash on hand, it ensures that you aren't overextending yourself. You possess the true financial bandwidth to absorb the cost without jeopardizing your baseline security.
It takes all the power away from the algorithm and puts it right back in your hands.
So, if we pull all of this together, look at the ground we've covered today. We started by uncovering the biological blind spot of that $25 illusion, where we trick ourselves into thinking a fraction of the price is the total cost.
We looked at the hidden, delayed pain of digital friction, how the financial sting of the purchase hits us long after the dopamine rush is completely worn off.
We mapped out the mathematical reality of the stacking trap, seeing how easily a few disjointed, seemingly harmless payment plans can invisibly merge into a crushing monthly subscription.
To your own past consumption.
Exactly. And finally, we explored the defensive strategies. Artificially reintroducing friction by limiting yourself to one active plan at a time and applying the rigorous cash test to ground your purchasing decisions in reality.
But as we always say, knowing this stuff is only half the battle.
So our challenge to you right now, today, is highly practical. Open up your banking app or your budgeting tool. Take a hard look and see if you have accidentally built one of these phantom subscriptions out of stacked payments. See how much of your next paycheck is already spoken for by the ghost of your past online shopping carts.
What is one subscription or payment plan you're going to cancel today?
It's an exercise in financial awareness. Identifying the trap in your own life is the only way to begin untangling yourself from it. You have to actively choose to reclaim the friction that the digital economy has spent billions of dollars trying to engineer away.
You really do.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the hidden mechanics of how we spend our money. But before we let you go, we want to leave you with a final lingering thought to chew on.
Something beyond just the math.
Yeah. As technology continues its relentless march to remove absolutely all friction from the way we navigate the world, making everything faster, smoother, and more invisible than ever, how might this constant cycle of instant gratification be permanently rewiring our brain's capacity for patience?
That's a great question.
If we can't even wait for a pair of shoes anymore, what else in our lives, our relationships, or our careers are we losing the ability to wait for? Until next time, keep diving deep.